Hey everyone! Today on the plastic canvas we're painting the Scourge Beasts from Bloodborne, the board game, by CMON Games. Hey everyone, Matt here from the Plastic Canvas and welcome to the third episode in this Bloodborne painting series, and today we're painting the Scourge Beasts. This is one of the enemy types that you'll come up against in this adventure and exploration game from CMON Games. So in the previous episode in this series I painted the Huntsman's minions, and with them I ended up spending a lot more time painting them than what I initially thought I would because of just how much I enjoyed painting them. I just kept wanting to add more depth of colour to the shadows and the highlights and more texture to their cloaks that they were wearing. So then I chose the Scourge Beasts to paint next because I knew that they would be a much faster paint because they're a lot more simple. It's really just their fur and the rags, but also because I was going to be painting them in a very different way to how I painted the Huntsman's minions. Because as you can see, I'm going to be using washes to do all of the base coating. And the reason I'll be using the washes is because it's a very highly textured surface with all of the individual furs. To do the highlighting and shading on these and individually pick out all of those hairs or bits of fur is just going to take such a long time. And so using the washes is perfect for the Scourge Beast or just any mini like this where they're predominantly one colour but it's highly textured, because it's all going to flow into all of those recesses, which will leave all of the raised textured parts, in this case the fur, lighter, and so you get all of your highlighting and shading done for free. So to start it off, I did a zenithal prime, so I hit them with black all over, and then grey from a fairly high angle, and then finished it off with white from directly above. And the idea of doing a zenithal prime is so that when the washes go over the top, anywhere that they go over the white prime, it's going to appear much lighter than anywhere it goes over any of the black prime that's still showing. And so you get to completely skip the highlighting and shading step because the underside will look like it's in shadow, whereas the upper parts will look like they're being lit by light. Now when base coating, so that it didn't just look like there were four clones of each other out on the table, you can see here from this photo that I varied the colours that I chose from one Scourge Beast to the next. So with this one, I did a mix of black and green, for another it was a mix of black and blue, and then more browns in the other two. But what you can see I'm also doing though is on the hands and the feet, I'm using the Carroburg Crimson there to lay some red down on the hands and then blend it back into the arms. This is just so that the entire mini isn't just one single colour, and it adds a little bit more visual interest to it. You can see though that I've done this while the green base coat colour is still wet so that I can blend those colours together, and what it also did was it created a nice sort of fleshy tone kind of between where the red meets the green, and that was just a cool little transitional tone there. You can see I'm also using it in the mouth just to make sure it's a nice reddy colour, and I'm blending it out, extending it sort of past the gum a little bit and then blending it out so that then when I paint the teeth you can see that those gums are showing through. I did a couple of coats of the red, so I let the whole mini dry, and then I came back and did the red again just to really build that red colour, because as it mixed with the green with the first coat, it was too light and washed out. So once it had dried, came back with the red and just to intensify that a little bit more. And now it is on to painting up the bandages. I kept these really simple because I knew that this would be a part that could really become a time sink, because it does take a while to go through and just pick out each of these bandages so they're the same colour across all four minis. You can see I'm just base coating here with a light bone colour, and in a minute I'll come in with the Seraphim Sepia Citadel wash, just lay that over the top of all of them just to dirty them up a little bit and also help to bring out the different layers of of the bandages because some of them do go across the top of each other. I think I do 2 layers of the sepia just because the first coat just didn't quite darken them enough. So I'll let that completely dry and then come back and do a second coat of the sepia as well. Now, normally when using washes, we try and avoid it pooling anywhere, but here I was happy to put it on pretty thick and let it flow in between the ripped parts of the bandages where you can see some of the green fur showing through, just so that it would sit in there quite thickly, so that as it dries, it creates a nice shadow in between each of the bandages, just to help that torn look of them stand out, as well as help to show the different layers of the bandages as they crisscross over each other. So now I'm just starting to do one really simple layer of highlighting. So I've just gone back to the polished bone, which was the bandage's base coat color, and I'm just picking out the most raised edges. What I'm being careful of here is that anytime 2 layers of the bandages come and meet, I make sure that I have a gap in the polished bone highlighting here, just so that it keeps that shadow in between, because the basic idea here is that I'm just building some simple contrast so that the different layers of the bandages stand out a little bit more, but also so that some parts of the bandages appear a little bit cleaner than other parts, which just helps to build that old, worn, dirty, and tattered look, instead of the entire bandages being exactly the same color. Alright, so now I'm starting to work on the teeth and the claws, and because this is an aspect of the Scourge Beast that's really going to add a lot of character and a part that's going to stand out, I build this up over several layers as opposed to just using one simple flat color. So as a starting point, I'm just laying down a brown base coat over the entire teeth and claws, and you can see I've gone with a brown that isn't too dark so that it won't be able to be seen, but it's still dark enough that it will be clearly the darkest part of the teeth and the claws. And now that this initial coat of brown is finished, I'm going to come in with aged bone, which you can see here, which is one of my darker bone colors. And this is going to be used to cover up most of that brown base coat. But I'll be leaving the base of the teeth and the claws exposed. So where the teeth meet the gums and where the claws meet the paw, that part will still be brown. And the idea of that is that it just gives a bit of an indication that the teeth and claws are starting to rot a bit. So as I'm painting the teeth here, because they're so small, all I'm really doing is just putting a blob of the aged bone on the tip of each tooth, just making sure that I leave a little part of the brown where it meets the gum exposed. But here where I'm painting the claws, I do more striations here as opposed to just a blob of paint. So just starting at the base of the claw where it meets the paw, I'm just painting a series of lines that all converge to a point on the tip of the claw. So there are gaps in between each of the lines at the base, but they all come and meet together at the point. And then with the next layer, to really build some contrast and to help those striations stand out, I'm going to move to my pure white color. So it'll really jump from the bone color to white. And there I'm going to paint back over these striations, but really only at the tip. So most of these lines with the aged bone will still be shown because I'll probably only cover up about a quarter of them with the white just at the tip end. And what that's going to do is, first of all, really help these striations stand out because the white will just make it stand out just that bit more. But also there'll then be a lot more contrast between the brown that's still showing at the base and then the white at the tip, and then that will help that brown rotting kind of look that I'm going for at the base really stand out. So you can see I'm not just using it on the claws, I'm also using it on the teeth just to add a bit more definition, help them stand out a little bit more, but still most of it is going to be that aged bone color so that they don't appear too white, but that added contrast created with the white on the tips will just help that brown rotting look at the base of each tooth and claw just to stand out that little bit more. So now that the teeth and claws are finished there, you can see the effect that the white tips have had there. It just makes the teeth and claws just stand out that bit more, but also adds to that textured look that I was going for. Alright, so just as one of the finishing touches, we're going to paint a really simple red glowing eye. So to do that, I'm just filling the entire eye socket with one of my darkest reds, and then here we move to bloody red, which is a much brighter and more saturated red, and this just goes more to the middle of the eye socket but leaves some of that darker red still showing, and then I'll be finishing off with just a tiny bit of white right in the middle just to give that glowing effect. This is definitely one of those parts of a mini that's painted to look good when it's in the middle of the table being seen from the distance around the outside, because if you hold this up close, the effect doesn't quite hold up, but I think when it's sitting in the middle of the table being seen from a bit of a distance, this effect looks pretty cool. But the important thing when painting a glowing eye like this is to always make sure that you leave part of the previous layer showing so that you get that graduation from the darker color around the outside to the brighter one in the middle, so that that glowing effect does sort of come through. And now here, just as the final finishing off touch, except for painting the base black, I'm just going to be putting some blood spatters here and there to make it look like the Scourge Beasts have recently attacked some hunters. When I use something like blood for the blood god to try and keep the blood looking as natural as possible, I always put it down first in the spot where I want it to be at its thickest, so in this case here, just immediately around the edge of the Scourge Beast's mouth, and then I'll clean the bristles off, and then with them slightly damp, I'll then feather out the edge of the blood that I've put down away from the direction of where I want it to be its thickest. So in this case, I'll be spreading it out in the direction towards the neck of the beast here. And then once I've spread it out by thinning out those edges, I'll then get some more blood for the blood god and put it back in the middle where I want it to be its thickest. And what this helps to do is make it look as though the blood has either soaked into the fur or material or whatever it is that the blood is sitting on, because I think one really easy mistake that you can make with blood is to just put it down just in blobs here and there, and all it ends up looking like is just puddles over whatever your mini is, whereas in reality, blood will soak into material or something like that. And so this is just a really simple way of just getting that look as though there's been a splatter of some description, and it's then soaked into whatever the blood is sitting on. And here's just a quick shot to show how I've varied where I've put the blood from one to the next, as with some I also put it on their claws. It's just another easy way to get a little bit of variety from one to the next. And as I finish it off by painting the base black, our Scourge Beasts are done. So thank you very much for checking out another one of my videos. I was really happy with how this turned out, especially when considering the time that went into it. These were a pretty quick paint. These are probably finished in somewhere around the hour mark, maybe just under. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet, to stay up to date with future videos as they keep coming out, as well as stopping by the Facebook, Twitter and Instagram accounts for this channel, where you can see what I'm painting and then what videos are going to be coming up soon. So we're going to leave it there for today. So this is Matt from the Plastic Canvas signing out. Happy painting, everyone. Cheers.